Good morning. Welcome, both in the sanctuary and online, to the Unitarian Universalist Church of St. Petersburg on the unceded ancestral lands of the Seminole and Tocobaga Native Americans. My name is Ben Atherton Zeman. I'm the minister here, and I'm excited to bring you today's worship service, The Courage to Be Indigenous, along with today's worship associate, El Maldonado.
Thanks, Ben. We are a people of many beliefs, but we share a common faith, that what we do in this world matters, and that we are connected to one another and to our planet. Whoever you are, wherever you are in your journey, you are welcome here. We do have two announcements. The St. Pete Youth Farms Collecting and Delivering desperately needs childcare items like diapers to Southwest disaster zones. Collection boxes with information are at the front and back church entrances.
All right, thanks, El. Our second announcement is this Tuesday is the last day to register to vote. So please ask someone if you need help registering or making a voting plan. This is a thing we're doing, is we're making our voting plan. The Social Justice Committee members are available to help. Can you raise your hand if you're on the Social Justice Committee? I see a couple of folks from the Social Justice Committee. I don't see anyone from the Social Justice Committee. No one that's raising their hand anyway. Ask me then. I also want to give a special welcome to any newcomers. So if you do want a church where we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, not Columbus Day, I have good news. You may have found your church home. So if you are new to UU St. Pete, and I talked with a couple of you a minute ago, can you give a wave? We'll just wave back to you. Hello, wavers. And if anyone likes, yeah, you can clap for the new folks. That's a good idea. Welcome, new folks. You get applause. You don't have to, but if you like, I'm going to invite you in a second to stand up and say who you are and what brought you here, anything fun like that. And I know one of you has been gone for a while and is now back, and it's good to see you. Now this week, this is exciting. We purchased blue mugs for coffee hour. These are different than our white ones we usually use. So if you're new, you want to grab a blue cup, and then everyone will come up to you and talk to you, hopefully not in an invasive type of way. So if you have a white mug, go say hi to somebody in a blue mug. Anyone want to say hello? Yeah, hi, go ahead. Claudia, it's nice to have you. Claudia, who living in Westminster Palms, most recently from North Carolina, not South Carolina. See, I'm going to repeat like what I hear so that the folks on YouTube can hear. Anyone else willing to say hello? Yep. No, you first. Yep. Nope. Paul and Celeste, welcome, who were at the Charles Mokotov guitar concert last night. Many of you were at this spectacular concert we had, and Paul said he heard me say, I guess, about the topic of Indigenous Peoples Day and my invitation to come here, and you accepted. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, you guys. Joseph and Marchett from Philadelphia, welcome. Recently moved here, and I'm so glad to see you. Good to talk to you earlier about Philadelphia things, because I used to live there too. Anyone else? All right. Kelly Olson is live streaming today with help from James, and our greeters are Patty Kane Wood, Barbara Archibald, Tom Archibald, Jill Odensky, and Lucinda Zeman. Our religious education volunteer is Ariana Drew. The class is being led by our Director of Religious Education and Communications, Janae Johnson. Let's take a moment to greet our neighbor. As of this week, masks are optional in the sanctuary. Pretty exciting news, but still make sure you get consent if you're going to shake someone's hand or hug them or anything like that.
Our flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It is a symbol of hope, the sacred, the quest for truth, the warmth of community, the light of reason, and so much more. When Ben lights our chalice, I invite you to say our covenant out loud. The words can be found in the text chat on YouTube. Feel free to follow along with the two hand movements. Love is the spirit of this church. In service, its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now please rise as you are willing and able for our first hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. It's number 1008 in the teal hymnal.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. You may be seated, except the children, who are welcome to come forward for Time for All Ages. Good to see you guys. Welcome. Have a seat. Good to see you both. Her name is Elle. This is Elle, everybody. That's Elle. Her whole name is Elle Tucaliha Maldonado. All right. So we had a big weather event last week. It was a hurricane. Anyone remember the name of the hurricane? What was it? You forgot. What was it? Hurricane tornado? No, but good guess. What was the name of the hurricane?
Hurricane Ian.
It was Hurricane Ian, yes. Now, what did you guys do and what did your families do during Hurricane Ian? Did you, yeah?
We went to somebody else's house.
Okay, great. Grandparents' house? What'd you do?
I went to my papa house.
Went to your papa's house? Yeah.
I stayed with my mom and was doing gymnastics.
And you got hugged, maybe by other people. So none of you stayed in your house. You all moved to another house for the hurricane. You did stay in your house? Okay, so some of you stayed, and I think that's true of the adults. Some of us stayed put, and some of us relocated. What were you feeling? Like when you were, yeah.
I felt scared.
Felt scared? Yeah. Anyone else feel scared? Any adults feel scared during Hurricane Ian? Yeah. I thought you had your hand up.
I was bored.
Bored. Anyone else feel bored? Yes, yes.
I felt scared.
Felt scared also. Anybody feel excited? All these high winds and stuff like that? Yes? You felt excited?
Yeah. I felt surprised, actually.
Felt surprised?
I didn't even know a hurricane was coming.
Didn't know a hurricane was coming, yeah. Now, was anyone all alone by themselves? Did you go someplace alone? No? You were with your parents? You were with your family? Yeah.
I was with my mom and Rose, and I was really just with my mom mostly.
Okay, great. I was also not alone. I was with my wife Lucinda, and we went across the state to my dad's place in Vero Beach, whereupon the hurricane followed us, which apparently is a thing. Who knew? I saw a lot of people helping. I saw it on television, and I saw it in person. There were a lot of people, for example, this church was not damaged too much. We had one window broken. It was over there in that little closet there. There was, I think, a branch came in and broke the window. But there was a lot of branches and a lot of limbs that were down, and lots of people came and they helped. They helped to pick everything up. And Ryan, if he's here, Ryan, turns out can fix windows, so Ryan fixed the window. Did you guys see people helping, either in person or on television? Who'd you see helping?
I just saw when I was at my papa house, and I was watching some news, and then I saw one house broken and it was full with water, and a palm tree broke down a roof.
Okay. Was anyone helping those people?
Well, it was just pictures of the houses.
Pictures of the houses. Did anyone see anybody helping, or did anyone help themselves? Like, were you helpers? Did you help pick up things?
Oh, you took my question right out of my mouth.
going to say something, or you just had your hand up? Well, a lot of people did help, and a lot of people needed the help, and that's partly what we're doing today with these boxes. We're collecting things for people whose houses, like the one you saw on TV, had trees fall through them. And so a lot of folks brought things and will bring things, hopefully, in subsequent weeks, so we can continue that. And then my friend, who has my job just south of here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Sarasota, wrote a poem about the hurricane and about being together in community and about helping, which Elle will read to us after you say what you want to say.
What are we going to be doing?
Well, first, I hope you have your listening ears on, because I'm going to read something, and then you guys are going to go with Miss Janae and everybody, okay? Okay. And so we meet after the storm, after many, many storms, and with knowledge that there will be more storms to come. Still we gather for comfort, for company, for community, to remember we are not alone. To remember that despite setbacks, we are resilient. To understand that despite destruction, we can wake up every morning and love again. May we find the courage to embrace life and to work to heal each other and the earth.
All right, thank you, Elle. Let us sing them out to their classrooms. Switch microphones. We'll come to our time in the worship service for joys, sorrows, and concerns. Now, if you're on YouTube and you've done this before, you know the drill. Please type your joys and your sorrows into the text chat. Here in the sanctuary, we have cards, those of you who are new, in front of you, the sort of big-ish cards that say joys, sorrows, and concerns. So you could write your joy, your sorrow, your concern on that card quickly, and then hopefully one of the greeters will come get it and bring it up to us. Most often people submit their joys, sorrows, and concerns to me in advance, minister@uustpete.org. Right now, Lucinda will place a stone in the water for each one that was submitted this week.
Well, I have a big stone of joy this week. I accepted a teaching position at the Gulf Coast. It's a very long name, so I'm still learning the acronym, but JFCS, to work with refugee children. Super excited.
Congratulations, Al. We have a stone of sorrow from Geneva Nelson, David, and Karen Cole for former UU St. Pete member Mike Manning. He was diagnosed with liver cancer 2 weeks ago. It was very aggressive, and unfortunately, Mike passed away on Thursday. Mike always had a smile on his face, was upbeat, and supportive of the church's work. Our thoughts and our prayers go out to his wife Margie, who is a past president of our congregation. And Dave Cole will especially miss Mike because he and Mike played golf together every Wednesday. There'll be a memorial service for him in December.
A stone of concern for Lee Silverstein, who is taking our new member class. Lee took a fall after the hurricane and dislocated and broke her ankle multiple places. She had surgery last Friday. Screws and plates were put in, and Lee is looking at about 6 to 8 weeks of being off her feet. Lee is at Encompass Rehab and would appreciate any calls or visits. You can see Reverend Ben for her number.
A stone of joy from the seven of us present at the Women's March for Reproductive Justice yesterday. So the stone of joy is a celebration that the march took place and was so well attended. But let's have a second stone of sorrow for the fact that reproductive freedom continues to be curtailed in this state and in this country.
So a stone of joy from Dave and Karen Cole for their grandson, David, who turned 20 this week.
And a stone of concern from David who says, Mary, my friend, will undergo knee surgery on Tuesday.
A stone of sorrow from Joanne, my friend Jim, who lost his mom this week.
A stone of joy from the crowd of people who got to see Charles Mokhtov perform his beautiful classical guitar music right here last night. We raised money both for UU St. Pete and for hurricane relief. Thanks to everyone who organized and who volunteered their time.
And a stone of concern from Chris McDonald for my friend from high school, Nancy, whose home was in Port Charlotte, got stuck in the hurricane, had a heart attack, and is now in the hospital.
That's all I have.
That's all I have. Oh, well, no.
No, I read that one.
Okay, never mind then.
May we bring to mind and hold close to our hearts those known and unknown who are facing health concerns. And may we also continue working for universal health care in this nation so that no one need worry about the financial burden in receiving needed health care. May all who are facing challenges known and unknown find a comforting presence in the warmth of fellowship and community. And let's place the final stone for those joys and concerns and sorrows that remain in our hearts, perhaps too tender yet to be spoken aloud. And let's take a moment of silence together. Mystery is that we are connected, even when we feel apart. So let us rejoice in our beloved community that makes of the many one. So may it be.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the
Taigwe, Kena, Mabrika, Dagwaitiano. Good day, and welcome, my friends. I am thrilled to be able to stand with you all here today and share some of my experience as an Indigenous person with regards to Columbus's legacy. Specifically, the tribe of people that I belong to, the Taino people of the Greater Antilles, were the first people to encounter Columbus and colonization in 1492. Many of us, myself included, probably remember the rhyme from school teaching about Columbus. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. It's very probable, in fact, that in your schools, Columbus was heralded as a hero. I remember that was the case when I was in public school. At home, however, I had always heard the truth. Columbus was no hero. Among the massive list of atrocities he committed in the Caribbean included cutting the hands off of people who would not or could not bring him gold, decimating the population through cruelty and disease, and enslaving my Taino ancestors. I don't want to spend all of my time talking about this evil man whose legacy, unfortunately, will eternally be intertwined with that of my community. I want to instead stand firm in the fact that despite his best efforts, our people are still here. If you do research on the Taino people, you will see that academics continue to perpetuate the myth that we are extinct. Spoiler alert, I'm standing right in front of you, that's not true. Okay. Oral history and tradition has always told us otherwise, but that doesn't hold up in academia. In 2017, we had the science to back up what we have been saying for centuries. Through genetic analysis, it was found that about 60% of the island of Boriquén, the indigenous name of Puerto Rico, still shows strong evidence of Taino DNA. When looking at the islands of Cubanacan, or Cuba, and Haiti, Hispaniola, the percentage drops down to about 30%. This is still incredible, considering it is taught that we no longer exist. My family and I are from the island of Boriquén. We fall into that 60% of Boricuas, or Puerto Ricans, with Taino lineage. I personally am enrolled as a member of the Arayeque-Yucayec tribal community, and it has been extremely healing for me to connect with a culture that was stripped away from us through colonization and genocide. Well, guess what, Columbus? You didn't get us all, and we're still here. Our existence as modern Taino people is a show of resistance and perseverance. The fact that now we are taking steps to revive our language, which I greeted you all in, and practice our traditions freely without worry of prosecution by the church is a miracle. My children and their children will stand proud in knowing that they are descendants of survivors and warriors. I want to end my time today with a poem written not by a Taino author, but a Lakota one. It has brought me a lot of peace, and I hope you will find peace in it as well. Our Father, the sky, hear us and make us strong. Our Mother, the earth, hear us and give support. Spirit of the East, send us your wisdom. Spirit of the South, may we tread your path of life. Spirit of the West, may we always be ready for the long journey. Spirit of the North, purify us with your cleansing winds. Anhan Katu, may it be so.
Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Ah, whoosh. Those who have died have never ever left. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees. They are in the groaning woods. They are in the crying grass. They are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead have a pact with the living. They are in the woman's breast. They are in the wailing child. They are with us in the home. They are with us in the crowd. The dead have a pact with the living. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the water. In the voice of the waters.
Thank you, John. Thank you, James. Those of you following along in your hymnal might note that I blew right past this lovely responsive reading. So that's my modeling for you this morning of not being perfect. You're welcome. Hopefully you all have a gray hymnal, and I know a lot of you are new. This one is easier to follow along than a hymn, so I encourage you to take out your gray hymnal and turn to responsive reading. It's number 614, the Sacred Hoop. Oh, wait for a second. What's the page number? Number for me. Page numbers. So I say the standard type, and then you all say the italics. Then I was standing on the highest mountain of them all. And while I stood there, I saw more than I can tell. For I was seeing in the sacred manner the shape of all things of the Spirit. And I saw that the sacred hoop of my people was one of many hoops that make one circle, wide as daylight and starlight. Thank you. I'm so thankful to you, Elle, for working on this worship service with me. You really taught me a lot, including the fact that on Indigenous Peoples Day, a lot of the conversation around do we call it Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, when it does center Native voices at all, centers the voice of Native voices from the mainland. And Columbus never stepped foot on the mainland of the United States, not once. And like you, I was taught lies, including that rhyme about Columbus at school. And like you, I was taught more of the truth at home. And then I read more truth from Indigenous friends and articles. As a young adult, one of my first political t-shirts combining humor with liberatory education, that is still on our quilts at home read, "Columbus discovered America, not." And once Facebook began, I began sharing articles written by Native people about Columbus and his legacy. And my Italian-American friend said I was a Columbus hater and complained that everyone was bashing him in an effort to be politically correct. My friend said Columbus was a hero to the Italian community. And I value this man, and I value his friendship. I think you know who it is, hon. So I tried to stick to our Unitarian Universalist principles in response, and I'll ask you to do the same throughout this reflection. And for visitors in particular, specifically our first and seventh principles, so that's the inherent worth and dignity of every person and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. In 1500, Columbus wrote the following letter to Doña Juana de la Torre, who was a nurse in the royal court of Queen Isabella. And I want to caution you that Columbus's words, and many of the words I'm going to use during this reflection, are horrifying as he discusses slavery and the purchase of human beings. So in the letter, Columbus says, 100 Castellanos are as easily obtained for a woman as for a farm. And there are plenty of dealers who go about looking for girls. Those from 9 to 10 years old are now in demand. According to the research I've done, this quote in particular underlies Columbus's view of indigenous Americans as commodities. And in the quote, he compares the market value of a female sex slave with that of a piece of farmland. Now, he's talking about 9 and 10-year-old human beings here. He's talking about Elle's ancestors being sold into slavery. I'm leaving out a lot of details from Columbus' letters and the letters of his crew, as he and they dispassionately describe the enslavement and dehumanization of not just Elle's Taino people, but other indigenous people in the Caribbean. In an earlier letter to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, Columbus describes the Taino people specifically, saying, "Of anything they have, if it be asked for, they never say no, but do rather invite the person to accept it, and show as much lovingness as though they would give their hearts." Now, to me, this sounds like the concept of radical hospitality that we so often try to embody in this congregation and the denomination. What if Columbus and his crew had responded in kind, offering gifts of his own to match the Taino gifts? What if the Europeans had opened trading routes to the Caribbean and the Americas, treating them with respect and as equals? Today, would we have a North and South America shaped by indigenous technology, shaped by indigenous means of government and culture, with 1 billion indigenous people living here, a majority of indigenous news anchors, CEOs, movie stars, an indigenous version of Fox News where the right-wing indigenous hosts complain about illegal European immigrants? What if that had happened? But that's not what happened. Columbus, instead of valuing this generosity of spirit and welcoming nature of the Taino people, saw it as a weakness to be exploited. And exploited he did. In 1492, he just had the Pinta, the Nina, and the Santa Maria, but for his 1495 voyage, he was given an invasion armada, 17 ships instead of 3, more than 1,200 men. Howard Zinn writes in the People's History of the United States that they went from island to island in the Caribbean, taking indigenous people as captives. In one particular raid, Zinn said they rounded up 1,500 Arawak men, women, and children, put them in pens guarded by Spaniards and dogs, then picked the 500 best specimens to load onto ships. Of those 500, 200 died en route. It was the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. is the ancestor's breath, voice of the waters. Columbus was removed as governor of the American territories after reports surfaced of this horrific mistreatment, misgovernment, and he was even briefly imprisoned before he was pardoned by King Ferdinand. But for me, this is more than just about Columbus as an individual. It's about this profit-making system of slavery and subjugation, which continues to shape our current economy and continues to benefit white Americans like myself to this day. And it's about a view of Native and Indigenous people as not human. And this view is so baked into our culture in the United States that our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, contains the phrase, merciless Indian savages. And when I found this out, I made a Facebook post to draw attention to it, and I was promptly kicked off Facebook for weeks for using hate speech, our founding document. Elle and I talked about the tendency for white Unitarian Universalists to feel guilty when learning the correct version of our history. Neither of us want the white UUs to dwell on our guilt, speaking as a white person myself. And I know it can be painful to hear about this. I'm feeling pain telling you these words. It was painful writing this reflection, but it's nothing compared to the pain Elle and their fellow Taino people feel hearing whites claim that this history shouldn't be talked about or isn't true. So rather than argue with my Italian-American friend about whether Columbus was a hero or a monster, I'd like to go beyond that binary even for individuals. We each here have the potential to be both angels and demons. I've done many things to help people to make the world better. And I've done things to harm people, and I've made the world worse. I dare say each one of us has done the same. And Unitarian Universalists understand that individual harms and helping actions do occur in the context of systems, in this case influenced by, at the very least, class, gender, race, and history. So our individual angelhood and demonhood exist within the context of these systems. And in Columbus's time, the European capitalist system of owning other human beings and stealing their land was economically justified by monarchs and by slave traders like Columbus. And it was also morally justified by many of our Christian forebears. According to UU Reverend Janet Parsons, in the 15th century, popes began to issue decrees, known as papal bulls, to give European explorers permission to take possession and settle lands on other continents. The intention behind them was to spread the reach of Christianity. Since these papal bulls regulated international exploration and commerce, they came to have the force of international law. Together, the bulls became known as the doctrine of discovery, which many of you know about. The moral justification for the doctrine of discovery rests on the assumption that colonization was beneficial to indigenous people, since it gave them access to Christianity and civilization. But the hypocrisy became obvious to Christians like Bartolomé de las Casas, which some of you I'm sure know about. He was a Spaniard who took part in colonial expeditions to Hispaniola, again, El's ancestral land. And in the early 1500s, de las Casas participated in the colonization and owned slaves himself, but later freed his own slaves, took a step in between saying slavery was not okay to do to indigenous human beings, but it was okay to enslave Africans. But then finally renounced slavery altogether. And de las Casas became a Dominican priest and spent 50 years of his life actively fighting slavery and the colonial abuse of indigenous peoples. Yet despite the efforts of Las Casas and other anti-slavery Europeans, Despite the resistance on the part of the Taino people and other Native Americans, the colonization of these two American continents did in fact take place at the cost of millions of indigenous lives. And my white ancestors from Ireland and Germany were able to immigrate here, thrive, and flourish, partly due to that colonization, and also because of the labor of both indigenous and African slave labor. Now again, this is painful for me to realize and admit. And there are many whites who would rather we not teach our children about this historical reality because it makes our country look bad. So I'm glad that our denomination celebrates Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day. And I'm grateful for Indigenous leaders like Elle for being willing to educate whites like myself, despite the fact that this is not their job. It is courageous to be Indigenous, especially in this context of white denial, white racism. Modern Indigenous people, including modern Taino people, have to deal with widespread misinformation, ignorance, denial of history, and in addition, modern concerns like missing and murdered Indigenous women, water protection, daily microaggressions, and cultural appropriation draw similar responses of minimization and denial from white Americans. Now, when we think about colonization, and in the context of what we just heard from both Elle and myself, it's not surprising that white sports team owners would use racial slurs against Native people to name their sports teams. So Dan Snyder, the owner of the team now known as the Washington Commanders, is famous for defending his use of racial slurs, saying that the team's name was honoring Native people. This despite widespread outrage from the vast majority of Native leaders. Some Native writers responded by creating the campaign, "How Are We Being Honored Today?" which documented overtly racist anti-Native slurs and cultural appropriation by white-owned companies. How are we being honored today? But when you put team names and microaggressions against the examples of slavery and genocide we heard earlier, some white Americans might think, what's the big deal? It's just a team name. And as Unitarian Universalists, one of our founding principles as a denomination is the use of reason. And that prompts some of us white UUs to sometimes think we get to debate this historical reality and this daily experience of Indigenous people and other people of color. As we were preparing for the worship service, Elle said to me, if a community is telling you something is harmful, our job is to listen and not get up in arms about it. So I want to address my fellow white UUs for a moment. We have an opportunity right now. So confronted with this information, are we going to be the modern equivalent of Columbus or Bartolomé de las Casas? Because I believe our angel demon choice right now is about this, about do we listen to and validate and follow the leadership of El Tucalila Maldonado, of other Native Unitarian Universalists, other Native people, when it comes to issues, effective Native people, or do we debate them? Yes, we have the right to our opinion, but if we're saying the team names aren't a big deal and saying microaggressions aren't racism, if we're saying Columbus is a hero, we're essentially saying that the black Indigenous people of color in this denomination are wrong, and specifically they're wrong about their own life experience. We shouldn't get an equal say about the lived experience of BIPOC people. They are the experts of their lives, not us. Dan Snyder claims to honor Native people by keeping a racist slur in the name of the sports team he owns, and he may very well think that's the right thing to do, but he can only think that by ignoring all the Native voices clamoring for him to do the opposite. So my fellow white UUs, let we who have ears use them to listen. Native UU voices and Native voices are speaking to us every day. Do we listen or do we argue back? To El Tucalia Maldonado, to all Native and BIPOC UUs, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your example. I began today's worship service with a land acknowledgement. We are on the unceded ancestral lands of the Tocobaga and Seminole Indigenous Americans. I'm going to begin every worship service I lead from now on with that same land acknowledgement. We may not have two continents filled with billions of Indigenous Americans, Native CEOs, and a Native version of Fox News. But at least we can do this small thing to acknowledge we're on stolen land. I will try my best to listen respectfully rather than arguing when you educate me, and I will certainly make mistakes. And I hope those around me from all races will let me know when I do. If we value our first and our seventh principles, we will listen to those Indigenous leaders among us like El. We will not shirk from learning about the accurate history of how this country was founded. And we will do what we can to reverse the injustices of the past and create a beloved community of the future. Happy Indigenous Peoples' Day. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be.
Now, let us remember our connection to one another, and let us not forget our contributions to support the means of those connections. The link to give online is in the description box below your screen. You can also donate through the Fanco Faith Engagement mobile app or on our website under the Giving tab at uustpete.org, or by sending a check to the church office. We have benefited from the efforts and contributions of previous generations. Our spiritual ancestors planted the vision of this fellowship. They sowed with their physical labor and their financial labor the harvest we are now enjoying. We follow in their footsteps and plant trees, knowing that we might not be the ones who harvest their fruits or see their grandeur. May our offering be one of the many ways in which our hands and the intentions of our heart make manifest our love for one another and the world. In the sanctuary, our ushers will now pass the offering bowls. If you are a newcomer here, please refrain from making a donation. This service is our gift to you, and your presence is your gift to us. Many thanks.
I leave you with the words of El Tucaliha Maldonado. Guess what, Columbus? You didn't get us all, and we're still here. Our existence as a modern Taino people is a show of resistance and perseverance. The fact that now we are taking steps to revive our language and practice our traditions freely, without worry of prosecution by the church, is a miracle. My children, they say, and their children will stand proud in knowing they are descendants of survivors, warriors. Please join me in thanking Elle for her leadership in this congregation and in the world. Thank you all. Now feel free to follow along with the hand gestures as Elle extinguishes our chalice. The words to You St. Peace, traditional chalice extinguishing, are in your order of service, and online they are in the text chat. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of courage. These we carry in our hearts out into the world. Go in peace. Happy Indigenous Peoples' Day.